All right, let's jump right in. We're going to break down the latest Byer-Nichols cybersecurity threat brief for the first half of August 2025. And this report, it paints a really vivid picture of the digital battlefield right now. There are some fascinating and honestly pretty alarming trends we need to unpack. So let's get to it.
I want to start with just a single number, 84.25%. Just let that sink in for a second. What do you think that is? I'll give you a hint. It's not the success rate of some new exploit, and it's not the market share for some piece of software. No, this one percentage, it's the key. It's the key to understanding literally everything that's happening in the threat landscape right now.
And here's the answer. Over 84% of all cyber breach victims are small and medium-sized businesses. It's a staggering figure, right? And it totally sets the stage for everything else we're about to get into. This isn't just another number on a page, it is the central theme of this entire brief. Okay, so here's our game plan. First, we're going to dig into why small businesses are such a massive target. Then we'll meet the ransomware kings, see how they're breaking in, find out where the attacks are landing, and then we'll tie it all together to see the big picture.
So why that 84% number? Well, it's kind of a tough reality. You see, smaller businesses, they just don't have the huge security teams and massive budgets that big enterprises do. For attackers, this makes them the perfect soft target. They're way easier to breach, but still valuable enough to make a good payday. And for these businesses, a major breach isn't just some financial headache. No, it can be an extinction-level event. I mean, their survival literally hangs in the balance.
Okay, so we know small businesses are the target. The next question is obvious. Who's pulling the trigger? Well, it's time to meet the major players, the groups behind the vast majority of these attacks. And luckily for us, the report lays out a very, very clear leaderboard. Wow. Okay, take a look at this. What's so interesting here is the clear hierarchy, right? You've got 5 major players basically running the ransomware scene. Qilin is just sitting pretty at the top, responsible for a full 1/5 of all attacks. That's huge. But the rest of this list, man, it tells a story about just how fast this landscape is changing. So let's break down this power dynamic at the top. Think of Qilin as the reigning king on the throne. They're not just holding their ground, they're actively expanding their empire, jumping from 13% of all attacks to over 20%. And then you've got Akira. This is the rising challenger. They made a massive leap, coming from under 10% to over 14% and snatching that number 2 spot. And this just shows you how volatile this world is. You've got Play and Sanabi. They're basically new players on the scene, just bursting into the top 5. It proves how fast new, powerful groups can pop up. But the weirdest story here is Black Nevis. They're like a ghost from the past. This group was active, then poof, they vanished for months. And now, they're back, reappearing out of nowhere to claim a spot in the top 5. Wild. But it's not always about the money. Not every attack is about a quick ransomware payday. The brief also shines a spotlight on a whole different class of threat actor. We're talking about state-sponsored groups. And their motives are totally different. It's about espionage, about geopolitical goals, not just simple extortion. So here are the trending adversaries that the report says we absolutely have to watch. Now, all of these are a big deal, but the brief gives us this really fascinating deep dive on one group in particular, Curly COMrades. So Curly COMrades is what we call an APT, an Advanced Persistent Threat Group. Basically, they're sophisticated, long-term attackers, and this group is believed to have links to the Russian Federation. And their name, it's actually a bit of a nerdy joke. It comes from the fact that they use a super common command line tool called curl to sneak data out of their victims' networks. And right now, it looks like their primary targets are organizations over in Moldova and Georgia. So, what's their playbook? Well, it's classic espionage, really. Step 1, they get in. Step 2, they build these, think of them like secret hidden highways. They set up multiple reverse proxy tunnels that go from the victim's network straight back to their own servers. And finally, step 3, they just use those secret highways to quietly drive away with all that sensitive data. All right, so we've met the attackers. Now it's time for the how. How are these ransomware gangs and these APT groups actually getting inside? Well, the answer, pretty much as always, is software vulnerabilities. We're talking about the cracks in our digital armor. Okay, so this list shows the vulnerabilities that are getting hit the hardest right now. And here's the part that's just wild to me. Attackers are still having huge success with vulnerabilities in D-Link networking gear from 2020 and 2022. It's just a massive reminder that if you haven't patched something, it really doesn't matter how old that vulnerability is. It's still a wide open door. But the report flags one vulnerability as a really urgent concern. and this is the one to pay attention to. It's a brand new, high-severity flaw in Microsoft Exchange Server 2019. The recommendation from both Microsoft and Byer-Nichols could not be clearer. If you're running this on premises, you need to apply the hot fix right now, like today.
Okay, so we've got the who and the how. Now let's zoom out a bit and look at the where. Which industries and which countries are really feeling the heat from all these attacks?
So when you break it down by industry, man, it's almost a dead heat right at the top. You've got manufacturing and financial services as the most targeted sectors, which makes sense, right? That's where all the sensitive IP and money is. But they're followed super closely by construction and retail, which tells you that attackers are really spreading their bets across the entire economic backbone.
But then we look at the geography, and the story is just undeniable. It's not even close. The United States is the primary target by a massive margin. We're talking nearly 58% of all victims. To put that in perspective, that's almost 10 times more than the UK, which is in second place. All right, we've talked about the attackers, their methods, their victims. Let's pull all these threads together now and really talk about the big picture. What does all this mean for you? And here we are, right back where we started, 84.25%. After seeing everything, the dominant ransomware gangs, the state-sponsored spies, the old and new vulnerabilities they're using, just remember that all of this chaos and malicious activity is landing squarely on the shoulders of small businesses.
So, what's the real story from this August brief? At its core, it's a story about vulnerability. The huge majority of attacks are hitting small businesses. They're being hammered by a ransomware industry that's getting more professional every day, led by giants like Qilin. Meanwhile, you've got these state-sponsored spies constantly lurking in the shadows, using any crack they can find, old or new, to get in. And at this exact moment, all of those threats are converging on one primary target, the USA.
So that's the threat landscape right now. That's what the data is telling us. And it really just leaves us with one last critical question. Whether you're just one person or a small business or part of a huge enterprise, you gotta ask yourself, in this incredibly complex and dangerous environment, are you on the map?